The Euro 2024 group stages have almost finished, and there have been some real standout players. So in today's video, I thought it was a good idea to pick the best players from every Euro team. I'm going to be picking these players based on their form at Euro 2024 only. So club form or form at previous international tournaments is not going to make a difference here. Now before we start this video, I'd just like to recommend that you subscribe to the channel. It's completely free and you can always unsubscribe later. But anyway, with that all being said, let's get started with the best player from every Euro 2024 team. First up, Germany. In my opinion, the best player for Germany at this Euro has been Jamal Musiala. The Bayern Munich midfielder has got 2 goals in 3 games and he just has something special about it. The way he can dribble past 3 or 4 players and still stay on his feet is really impressive. I thought he was fantastic against Scotland in the opening game and he's continued that form into the rest of the group stages. I've been so impressed with Musiala that I think he might just be the best player at this Euro so far. Other players like Wirtz, Neuer, Kroos and Gundogan deserve a mention, but Musiala had to be my pick for Germany. Next up is Switzerland, and I've gone for Akanji. The Man City defender picked up the Man of the Match award against Scotland and continued that great form into the game against Germany. Other Swiss players like Xhaka and Ibiša have also had great tournaments, but Akanji has just been so solid at the back for Switzerland, so I had to pick him as their best player. Now the next team is Hungary, and I think their best player has been Szoboszlai. He's been great in the midfield as usual, and most of their chances have been created by him. He can do a really good cross, and he helped to set up their goal against Switzerland, as well as creating many chances towards the end of their game against Scotland. Players like Orban and Gulasi have also been impressive, but I think Szoboszlai has to be the best player for Hungary. The final team in Group A is Scotland, and I've picked Scott McTominay as their best player. He was their only goal scorer and their biggest attacking threat by far. I did consider picking Robertson, but I couldn't really pick a defender who'd conceded 7 goals in 3 games. So I went with Scott McTominay. Now let's move on to the first team in Group B, Spain. I've picked Dani Carvajal as their best player, which a lot of people will disagree with. But hear me out. Carvajal has played 2 games, kept 2 clean sheets and scored a goal. He's done his job defensively while also offering something going forward. You couldn't really ask for much more from a right back. Other players like Lamine Yamal and Nico Williams have played well, but they've only got 1 goal contribution between them. And that was Yamal's assist to Carvajal's goal. So in my opinion, Carvajal has been Spain's best player at this Euro. The next team is Italy, and I've gone for Donnarumma. If it wasn't for Donnarumma, Italy would have been thrashed by Spain and probably would have been beaten by Croatia as well. He made some really important saves in games where the rest of the Italy team were not playing very well. I'd say their best outfield player was probably Barella, but Donnarumma was their best player overall. Now the next team is Croatia, and I've picked Luka Modric. He might be 38, but he's still a top player. He's still able to hold up the ball really well and play some really intelligent passes. And let's be honest, none of the Croatian players had a great Euro, but Modric was the best player on the pitch against Italy. This is probably the last tournament that we're going to say this, but Luka Modric was Croatia's best player. The final team in Group B was Albania, and I've gone for Bajrami. He scored their opening goal against Italy, which was the fastest goal ever scored at a Euro, and he's continued to perform throughout the tournament. I also have to mention 34-year-old Jarsula, who scored an own goal and then a 90th minute equaliser against Croatia. But for me, Bajrami was Albania's best player. Now let's move on to Group C, starting with England. For me, England's best player has been Mark Guehi. He stepped into a back line that was criticised before the tournament and made it a lot stronger. England have only conceded once this tournament, and that was a goal from outside the box that there wasn't much he could do about. And since we've struggled so much going forwards, I had to pick a defender, and I think Guehi is one of our only players who's performed in the first 3 games. Bellingham was good against Serbia, but he hasn't really looked the same since. So I've picked the Crystal Palace defender Guehi as England's best player. Next is Denmark, and I've chosen Christian Eriksen. Eriksen is a really intelligent midfielder who makes fantastic runs and passes. He scored against Slovenia, and he's played well in all 3 matches. After what happened in the last tournament, I think it's amazing that Eriksen is playing so well, and I think he's been Denmark's best player at this Euro. Next up is Slovenia, and I've gone for Jan Oblak. He's their only player who's experienced at the highest level, and he's made some really important saves during this tournament. Slovenia's most well-known player besides Oblak, Sesko, hasn't really impressed me that much, and if I didn't pick Oblak, I'd be more likely to pick a more defensive player like Pujol. But I've decided to pick Oblak as Slovenia's best player of the Euro group stages. Now the final team in Group C is Serbia, and I've picked Dusan Tadic as their best player. He's really added something to their midfield whenever he's played, and surprisingly, Serbia's main forwards, Mitrovic and Vlahovic, have failed to be a threat in front of goal so far this tournament. Tadic is one of the only players on this Serbia team who's played quality football during this Euro, and for that reason, I think he's been their best player. Now let's move on to Group D, starting with France. I've chosen N'Golo Kante as their best player because he's dominated the midfield. He's been covering large distances, making a load of tackles and a load of passes, just like he did when he was at Chelsea. Despite the fact that he now plays in Saudi Arabia, Kante is still a top player, and in my opinion, he's definitely been France's most impressive player this Euro. France haven't conceded a single goal from open play during this tournament, and Kante is a big reason for that. Saliba and Upamecano also deserve a mention, but I think Kante has been France's best player. Next up is the Netherlands, and I've chosen Nathan Ake. The Dutch defence definitely hasn't been at its best so far, but Ake has been really good. I don't think he was at fault for any of the goals they conceded, and he's contributed going forward as well, with 2 assists against Poland in the opening game. I also considered picking Gakpo, who's got 2 goals in 3 games, but I've decided to go with Ake. Next up is Austria, and I've gone for Marcel Sabitzer. Sabitzer is key to everything that Austria create. He's their main man in midfield, and he contributes both defensively and going forward. He scored a goal and won a penalty at this Euro, and he's been crucial to Austria's success. Ranrik's side have scored 6 goals and they're top of the group, and Sabitzer is a big reason for that. In my opinion, he's been Austria's best player of these Euro group stages. Next up is Poland, and I've gone for Zielinski. Poland didn't do that well at Euro 2024, but I thought Zielinski was pretty good. He got an assist in the opening match, and I thought overall he was Poland's best midfield player. And since they struggled to score goals and conceded quite a few, I decided to pick a Polish midfielder, so I've picked Zielinski. Now let's move on to Group E, starting with Romania. I've chosen Dragusin as their best player because he's been very good at the back so far. I thought the Romanian defence played very well against Ukraine and Slovakia, and in my opinion, Dragusin is the most important player in that back line. He's a real leader in that Romanian team, and I think he's their best player. Next up is Belgium, and I've gone for Wout Faes. Belgium have been really solid defensively so far, and they've conceded just 1 goal at this tournament. And in my opinion, Wout Faes has been their most important defender. He's made 16 ball recoveries in just 3 games, and he's one of 2 Belgian defenders to have played every minute of this Euro. I did consider picking Kevin De Bruyne, but I think Belgium have been better defensively than they have been going forward. So for that reason, I've picked Faes as Belgium's best player of this Euro. Next up is Slovakia, and I've gone for Schranz. Schranz has scored 2 of Slovakia's 3 goals, and if it wasn't for him, they probably wouldn't have beaten Belgium in their opening match. He scored the only goal in that game, and his goals have been crucial to Slovakia's success. For that reason, I'm going to have to say that he's their best player. Now, the final team in Group E was Ukraine. I've picked Zinchenko as their best player because he's a real leader in that Ukrainian team. He was really good against Slovakia, getting himself an assist, but also really good against Belgium when he came off the bench. He helped to make sure Belgium didn't score to give his team a chance of qualifying. So for his great performances against Slovakia and Belgium, I think Zinchenko has been Ukraine's best player. Now let's move on to Group F, starting with Portugal. I've chosen Ruben Dias as their best player. He played 2 games and conceded just 1 goal, which was an outside-the-box screamer that there wasn't much he could do about. Dias was extremely reliable in the 2 games that he played, and I think he's forming a really good defensive partnership with Pepe. We all saw how much Portugal missed these 2 when they lost 2-0 to Georgia. Obviously, what Pepe's been doing at the age of 41 is really impressive, but I think Dias is now the better of the 2 centre-backs. So I've picked him as Portugal's best player of this year. Now the next team is Georgia, and I'm finding it very difficult to pick their best player. One option is their goalkeeper Mamardashvili, who's been very reliable between the sticks. He's made some very impressive saves for Georgia, and he's proving himself to be a very high-quality keeper. You've also got Napoli forward Kvicha Kvaratskhelia, who's been very impressive with his dribbling. But then Georgia also have the top scorer of Euro 2024 so far, Mikhail Tadze. He scored 3 goals, but 2 of them were penalties. It's a really tough decision, but I'm going to go with Mamardashvili. He's been the best keeper on the pitch in every game he's played, and that's very impressive. He's made more saves than any other goalkeeper at this Euro so far, and if he hadn't made some of those crucial saves, Georgia would not be in the last 16. And for that reason, I'm going to pick him as their best player at this Euro. Next up is Turkey, and I've gone for Real Madrid's Arda Güler. He scored an amazing goal against Georgia in the opening game, and despite having injury problems, he's continued to perform throughout the tournament. When he came on against Portugal, there was a noticeable change in the way Turkey were playing. They became more attacking and began to have more possession in Portugal's half. So not only does Güler score crucial goals, but he also makes his team play better. For that reason, I'm going to pick him as Turkey's best player. And now for the final team in Group F, Czechia. I've picked Souček as their best player. He's a strong defensive midfielder who's really important to the way Czechia play. He helps them to defend for large parts of the game like they did against Portugal, but is also very good at keeping the ball and driving forwards. He's the key player in that Czech midfield, and for that reason, I'm going to pick him as their best player. And that's it for this video, but before we end, I just want to thank you guys for getting me to 500 subscribers. I'm very happy that so many of you have decided to subscribe, and if you're not subscribed, I'd really appreciate it if you did. It's completely free, and the worst case scenario is that you just unsubscribe later. I'm going to be doing a lot of videos during Euro 2024, including my new knockout stage predictions and looking back at my old group stage predictions. I'm sure I got quite a few of those wrong. But anyway, if you want to watch more videos, you can click the videos on screen right now, and with that being said, thanks thanks for watching, and I will see you later. Why are you still here? Click the videos on screen right now to watch more videos. And subscribe. Thank you. Goodbye.